Who are the real men in black? We all know who they are, right? These guys. They're our first, last and only line of defense against the alien threat. They live in secret and exist in shadow. And they dress in black. They protect us from such threats as this guy, this wee dude, and... wait, hang on. If aliens look like that, then I don't think I'll need much protection.
Take me! Take me!
Of course, movies, TV shows and comic books portray them in this way, as heroes that protect the Earth. But what's the true story behind these mysterious, seemingly all-male organisation? What I can tell you is that they do exist. But this video is not to question their existence. This video is to uncover why. Who in fact are they and what is their purpose? A purpose that's darker than the black suits that they wear. Hi folks, I'm Johnny and welcome to The Oddest. Let's dive down this rabbit hole and ask the question that brought us all to this point. Who are the real men in black? So it's fair to say that the image portrayed in the movies is not a true depiction of the actual men in black, right? Save for maybe the fact that they wear black suits. In reality, the true nature of the MIB is far darker and way more terrifying. Some people say that they are a secret government agency deployed to debunk, dispel and discourage people from investigating and talking about incidents involving aliens and UFOs. And this is closer to the truth than first thought. But there are a lot more people that believe that these agents are not even human, and there's evidence to support this theory. The existence of the men in black goes back to the earliest reports, roughly when UFOs became prevalent in the public eye. Many experts say that this all happened after Roswell in 1947. They claim to be from a government agency or from a branch of the military, depending on the type of encounter and its geographical location. Encounters with the men in black come from all corners of the earth. It's safe to say that there have been cases and sightings in most countries. In the UK, they may well show up and identify themselves as part of the Royal Air Force or the Army. In the States, they might say that they work for the CIA or the Secret Service. But there are elements that link each and every one of these encounters. They almost always arrive in a pair. They dress from head to toe in a neat black suit. They more often than not wear thick black shades, despite being indoors or even at night. They will wear a black fedora style hat, and in every case reported, they have sickly white skin and speak in a very monotone voice with a non-descript accent. They are expressionless and often exhibit strange behaviours considered to be not human. So we've established what they look like and all that. Let's get into some of the most terrifying reports of first-hand encounters with the men in black. So let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Puget Sound in Washington in 1947. Harold Dahl was out on a wee boat with his son and dog doing some fishing. He reported that as he was in the bay just off Maury Island, he suddenly saw 6 donut-shaped objects above them in the sky. He went on to say that one of these objects seemed damaged and broke apart in the sky. The subsequent debris injured his son and killed his dog. Dahl also said that he was able to take photographs of the craft and the debris. Getting back onto dry land, Dahl took these photos to his boss. Obviously the man was sceptical, but he himself went with Dahl to the area, and both men were shocked to see one of the craft still hovering nearby. The very next day, a black Buick pulled up outside the Dahl home. A man dressed all in black and wearing dark glasses got out and spoke to Dahl. He claimed to be a government employee, and he asked Dahl if he could speak with him over breakfast. Both men went into the local diner and ordered food. During the meal, the man in black told Dahl that he must stop talking about what he had seen, or his son would suffer the same fate as the dog. The agent took any copies of the photographs in Dahl's possession. Now, although this incident could well have been something else other than a man in black, it's safe to say that from here on in, encounters with these men in black will only get stranger. Many of the incidents involving Men in Black that we hear stories and reports of today come courtesy of the late John Keel. He's famous for investigating the Mothman, a cryptid supernatural creature that plagued the city of Point Pleasant in West Virginia back in the late 1960s. The Mothman is a whole other story that I might consider doing a future video on. If you'd like to see such a video, then be sure to let me know in the comments below. John Keel ended up writing a now famous book called The Mothman Prophecies. The thing is, during his research for this book, he discovered that after interviewing several witnesses in Point Pleasant about the Mothman, that most of them spoke of visits from the Men in Black that were there to intimidate and threaten them not to discuss what they had seen. One of these witnesses that Keel spoke to was a journalist called Mary Hire. She was working on the Mothman story back in 1967 for a small newspaper called the Athens Messenger. She was working late one night when a stranger walked into her office. She described him as being under 5 feet tall, even although he was wearing obvious platform black shoes. He had raven black hair that was styled in a bowl cut. He was wearing thick rimmed glasses, under which was a pair of piercing hypnotic eyes. He opened the conversation with Miss Hire by asking directions to another town in West Virginia called Walsh. As he was speaking, he continually moved closer to the woman. Feeling uneasy at the man's strange demeanour, she picked up the phone and called her manager to come to her office, as he was also working late in the same building. The man decided to leave straight away, but not before picking up a pen from Hire's desk. According to Hire, he seemed to be obsessed with the pen. She said it was almost as if he had never seen one before. About 6 weeks later, she would see the same man again. This time, he was watching her from across the street. As Hire noticed him, a black Buick turned up, the man jumped into the car and they sped away. That would be the last time she would see him. There are countless Men in Black stories, each one more strange than the last. One of the strangest ones took place in Owatonna, Minnesota in 1966. A woman called Mrs. Butler and her friend were out for a walk one night when they saw two strange lights in the sky. According to Butler and her friend, one of the lights swooped down towards them and Butler fell to the ground as if she was having a seizure. She was able to pick herself up to her knees, at which point her friend continually asked if she was okay. It was reported that Butler began to speak in a voice that sounded robotic and laboured. She asked one question: "What is your time cycle?" before snapping out of the trance-like state, and the mysterious orb flew away into the sky. Mrs. Butler, after being interviewed by John Keel, went on to say that she continually got weird phone calls in the night with no one on the other side, only a strange clicking noise. Then, one afternoon, she got a visit from a man identifying himself as an Air Force officer called Major Richard French. French had a keen interest in UFOs and just wanted to talk to her further. She said that he was dressed very smartly in a black suit and drove a brand new black coloured Mustang. She also went on to say that his hair was pretty long, too long for that of an Air Force major. The very next day, the man would return and Butler invited him inside. Shortly after him entering the house, he began to exhibit what she described as stomach cramps. "Not to worry though, big fella. Mrs. Butler has the perfect home remedy," and she presented the man with a bowl of homemade jelly, or jello if you're in the States. But the man just stared at it, confused, like he had never seen it before. Butler instructed him that, well, you use the spoon and you eat it like food. He still didn't understand, and instead discarded the spoon and tried to drink the bowl of jello like it was soup. It was later reported during investigation of this incident that there was indeed a Major French stationed at a nearby airbase, yet he denies ever contacting or even knowing Mrs. Butler. This was corroborated when a photo of the real Richard French was shown to Butler, to which she said, "Yeah, that's definitely not the man that was here." Another encounter was that of Peter Rajevich. He was a folklore expert, and in 1987 he was writing a book about belief in other worlds. One afternoon he was in his local library researching and reading a book about UFOs when he was approached by a man in a black suit. The stranger asked him what he was reading. When Rajevich replied the book was about flying saucers, the stranger then asked him if he believed they were real. Rajevich replied by saying that he was a folklorist and didn't care if it was real or not. He was more interested in the witness accounts. This seemed to anger the strange man in black, who angrily said that UFOs are the most important fact of the century, before composing himself and calmly saying, "Be well on your journey." He then turned and walked away. Rajevich said that the stranger's accent was very generic and nondescript, and when he walked away it was a strange, fluid, almost like a robotic walk. Rajevich tried to follow the man only once he rounded the corner. He was shocked to see that not only was the stranger gone, but there was no one else in the library. In a more recent incident with the Men in Black, CCTV footage captured them entering the lobby of a hotel in Canada. In 2012, Shane Silva was the manager of a hotel in Niagara Falls. But back in 2008, Shane was witness to a UFO incident in the area and had only recently sat down with members from a group called the Aerial Phenomena Investigations. These strangers entered the hotel and began asking the staff about Silva, who wasn't in work that day. One of the bellboy staff called Silva on the phone at home and explained the weird encounter with these men asking strange questions. The bellboy went on to say that both of them spoke in similar generic accents and had pale, sickly skin, but strangest of all was that both men had no facial hair, none, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and were clearly wearing wigs. He also went on to say another strange detail was that during the entire conversation, they didn't blink. Possibly the most terrifying encounter with the Men in Black was reported by Dr. Herbert Hopkins in Maine back in 1976. Hopkins was researching a UFO case for a local investigative group when he got a telephone call from a man claiming to be a fellow UFO researcher. The stranger on the other end of the line asked if he could come to visit Hopkins in order to discuss his findings and compare notes, to which Hopkins agreed. Within a minute of hanging up the phone, there was an abrupt knock at the door. When Hopkins answered it, he was amazed when the person introduced themselves as the man on the phone. Now, remember, this was 1976. Not like he could have been standing right outside on a cell phone. Hopkins described this man the exact same as the rest of the Men in Black stories that we've covered here. He was tall, in a black suit and completely bald. No eyebrows, no eyelashes, and appeared to be wearing some sort of lipstick or paint to give his lips some colour. Hopkins invited the guy into his home. Immediately his dog started barking at the tall, pale man. The stranger opened the conversation by saying, "You have 2 coins in your pocket." Remarkably, this was true, and Hopkins was confused as to how he could have known this. The stranger then requested that Hopkins remove one of the coins and hold it out in the palm of his hand. Curious to see what was going on, Dr. Hopkins did as he requested. He said that he felt a strange heat coming from the coin before it seemed to change colour and vanish completely from his open hand. The stranger then asked him if he knew the name Barney Hill. For context, Betty and Barney Hill were the most famous alien abductees in history, and again could well be the subject of a later video for me. Hopkins replied saying that he was familiar with the Hill case, although he was aware that Barney Hill had passed away long ago. The stranger nodded and said, "Yeah, that's correct, because Hill suddenly didn't have a heart, the same way you don't have a coin." He then suggested that Hopkins cease all research into the UFO case he was working on. This encounter scared Hopkins so much that he did as the man suggested. He destroyed all of his research and stopped investigating the case. Reports of the Men in Black are certainly not just limited to the United States. Many encounters have occurred across the globe. Modern descriptions of these anomalous individuals can be traced back to the 50s. The thing is, this phenomenon not only predates the 50s, but goes further back, way further. During the Middle Ages, people often spoke of strange men dressed in black robes and wearing black hats, malevolent entities that seemed to possess and demonstrate inhuman abilities and were odd to look at. Descriptions of these strange men were always the same throughout that time, regardless of geographical location. This led many to believe that it was one man, and that man was the devil. Bearing in mind, it was the Middle Ages. So who are the Men in Black? Well, there are 2 main theories. Theory 1 is that these strangers are of extraterrestrial origin and that they disguise themselves to try and look as human as possible in efforts to control information and silence those that could blow the lid off UFO sightings. Theory 2 is that they are human and choose to shave off their eyebrows and all that stuff to make themselves more intimidating to witnesses. But then there is a third theory, and one which most people in the fringe community subscribe to. That it's a mix of both. That there are shadow government agencies at work to debunk, dispel and cover up UFO cases. That they work in conjunction with extraterrestrial beings in a joint effort to achieve their goals. So what do you think? Human? Not human? Or is it all just a load of nonsense? Let me know. I'm keen to hear what you guys think. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. Stay safe out there, folks. And remember, keep smiling.